Hi, I'm Dave. In today's lesson, we'll add dynamic routing to our React Native CRUD app with the Expo Router. I'll provide links to all resources in the video description. I'll also provide a link to join my Discord server where you can discuss React Native with fellow students, ask questions, and help each other out. Hey everyone, this React Native for Beginners educational video series is made possible by Zero to Mastery, also known as ZTM. I've been recommending ZTM on my channel for a couple of years now because ZTM has an amazing selection of in-depth, up-to-date courses. React, Next.js, Node.js, ZTM has it. Python, AI, prompt engineering, ZTM has it. Security, code interview prep, ZTM has it. When viewers ask me where they can go to learn more after completing a course on my channel, I recommend ZTM. And I always put links in my video description to ZTM courses, just like I've linked to ZTM's React Native course in the description for this video. After you complete this React Native course, ZTM's Complete React Native Developer is your next logical step. ZTM's course will reinforce the basics you learned from me and guide you through creating large-scale React Native apps that you can put in your portfolio and show confidently in a job interview. Look for the link in the video description and check out ZTM today. I've got VS Code open and you can see the CRUD app directory that I have over here in the file tree that we've been working on for the past couple of lessons. Let's open a terminal window with Control and the backtick. And if you haven't already opened that directory in the terminal, you'll want to CD and then into the directory, whatever you named it. Mine is named CRUD app. And so now I am in that directory and I can type npx expo start to go ahead and start up the application. This will go ahead and give us the QR code that you can scan with your Expo Go app on your mobile device, and you can view the application. Likewise, you can press W and it will open up in a browser here on the web. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And here we've got it. So it's even without pressing W, it says open web here. It's waiting at localhost port 8081. So I can also press Control and just click on that link. We'll go ahead and compile the project and should be ready to open it in the browser. And here is our CRUD app to-do list in the browser. Now, if I click on a to-do, it crosses it out, so we have an action there for completed or not completed. Likewise, we can delete a to-do as well. And in the last lesson, we added async local storage, so it remembers the to-dos we put in. When we reopen the application, the ones that we added are still there. Today, we want to add dynamic routing, and what that means is when we click on a to-do, for example, it's going to take us to a page just for that specific to-do. And we don't have to add a new route for each to-do. That would be static. What we mean by dynamic is we can add one route that can handle the page, the edit page that we're going to create for any one of these given to-dos. And we're going to do that by passing the ID of the to-do to the route. So let's get started with dynamic routing back in VS Code. Back in VS Code, let's go ahead and close the terminal window, and let's open up the CRUD app directory that we see here on the left, and then the app directory that has our index and our root layout file. And we want to click on that root layout file first. Let's go ahead and press a couple of keys. I'm going to press Alt-Z so it wraps any line of code down so you don't see it scroll off of the screen. And also for now, Control-B, which will hide the file tree and give us just a little bit more room. Now, if you remember earlier in this React Native tutorial series, we built a coffee shop application, and there we had a stack that had more than one stack screen. So far as we've been working on this CRUD app, the to-do list, we've only had one file, the index that we have put everything in. But now we're going to have a dynamic route, and it's going to have its own stack.screen. But before I do that, let's go ahead and add screen options to the parent stack. So screen options, and I'll set this equal to what we have below, header shown false. And this way, we won't have to put the header shown false on every stack.screen. So I can remove this, and now this setting for the stack will apply to both stack screens that we'll have. So let me press Shift Alt and the down arrow to copy that down. And now let's put in the new name for our new stack screen. And this is going to be our dynamic route. So we're going to create a to-dos directory inside of the app directory. And then we're going to have a file that represents the dynamic destination, if you will, for our edit page for each to-do. And it's represented inside of brackets. and we'll just put ID because we're going to pass the to-do ID, whatever that ID is, and that will pull up the individual to-do that we can edit at this dynamic route. So now, after we save these changes, we need to go back to the file tree and create that dynamic route. It's going to be in the app directory, so I'll create a new directory here called to-dos, and then inside of the to-dos directory, I'll create a new file, and I'll name it ID inside of brackets like that, and then .jsx. Now remember, we're not using TypeScript in this series, but please feel free to if you're comfortable with TypeScript. Now we are going to build a complete component, a complete page for our application, if you will, here, but I'm going to start out with the very basic stuff, and then we'll come back and add the rest. So for now, I want to import use local search params from Expo Router. After that, I'm going to start defining the function, so I'll have export default function. I'm going to call this edit screen. Then inside of the function, we can say const, and we can destructure the ID, which is that param, when we call, we'll set that equal to actually use local search params. So when we call that hook that we have imported from Expo Router, it will give us the ID value that is passed to this route, which is represented by the ID inside of the brackets. So for now, let's just have a return, and I'll put something simple here like, oh, I guess we'd need to import text if we were going to do this exactly for React Native. Typically in a web application, I would just put like an H1 header, but let's go ahead and import text from the top. And maybe a couple of other things. Let's do a view text. We're going to need a style sheet eventually as well. And pressable for a button and a text input also. All of these can come from React-Native, which is why I went ahead and did that. Let's press Alt-Z to wrap that line down. Okay, so we could just put maybe a view here for now. And inside that view, we could have text, and inside of the text, we could put in the ID value, of course, that we have received. And so this is just a very basic page. We'll come back and add much more to this. But for now, I just wanted to put in the basics. Okay, let's move over to the index page. This, of course, has our full list of to-dos, and we need to change a couple of things just so when we click on a to-do, it takes us to this dynamic route. Let's scroll down in this index file until we reach our render item, where we are actually creating the list items that we list out. Okay, here it is. Notice we have a view, and inside of the view we have the text of the item, and it has an on press. Then we also have a pressable, and this is, of course, to call our remove to do function. So what we want to do is wrap this text in another pressable. So let's start there. I'll take this closing pressable and cut it out here with Control X and just paste it underneath the closing text. So we have now wrapped the text in pressable. And now I want to remove this on press that we have where we're toggling the to-do item. So I'll also cut that out with Control X. And I'm going to put that inside of the pressable itself here. But I'm also going to change the on press. There's also something called on long press, and that's what we're going to use is a long press to toggle the to-do item. So if I press down on the to-do item and hold my finger there just a little longer, or hold my mouse button down just a little longer, that's going to toggle the to-do item. So that means we're also going to have a regular on press, and this is going to help us navigate to that dynamic route. So let's go ahead and call this function. And inside of the function, we're going to have a new one that we need to create yet. I need lowercase here, handle press, and this will receive the, let me get the right casing, item.id. There we go. So what we're going to do is call handle press and pass the item ID in, and handle press will navigate us to that new dynamic route. Okay, so just like before, I'm going to press Control B to hide the file tree and have a little more room, also Alt-Z to wrap any long lines down. Now let's go ahead and see if we have already imported useRouter. I don't think we have, and we're going to need that in this application. So let's import useRouter here. Import useRouter. That's going to come from Expo Router. And after that, we can use it here underneath. Let's put it underneath our use state and use context. So now we'll say const router equals use router. And now we can use the router from useRouter to navigate. So now we can create our handle press function. And I'll just do that underneath all of our other CRUD functions here. So after const remove to do, we'll have const handle press. Let's set this equal to a function that receives an ID. And now inside of this function, we're going to say router.push. And this is where we can put in the URL. So I'm going to put in a template literal string so I can insert the ID. And it's going to be to-dos. Let me go ahead and start with a slash here. Slash to-dos slash. And now I need the ID number that we're passing in that the function receives. So let's save that and we come back and look at this. And here it is called with the item.id. And that will route to our dynamic route when the item is clicked with a normal click or a normal press. A long press will toggle the completed status of the to-do just like we were previously doing with a normal press. Okay, I know the application won't look like much now on the new page, but let's go ahead and try the dynamic routing out because we actually have it in place. So we have started the application, or if you need to restart it with npx expo start, and then let's go ahead and press Control, or you can press W to open the web. I'm going to press Control and click on localhost 8080 and pull the application up here in a new tab. I'll close my old one. Here is the application. So now a long press, I'll click and hold, and it crossed off the to-do, just like we had previously done with a normal press. I can click and hold again, and of course it unchecks it. So essentially completed or uncompleted. But now let me go ahead and just click the to-do. And you can see we've got the number 20 way over here in the top left. It would be hard to see. Let me go ahead and zoom in with Control and the plus button. There's the number 20 at 500%. That's as big as I can make the screen. But we do have it on the screen. So now let's go ahead and make this page the edit page for any specific to-do. And of course, if I come back and click on a different one, there's the number 12. So it's going to show the ID of whatever to-do we click on right now. Let's go back to VS Code and finish this page. Okay, back in VS Code, I'm going to close a terminal window and open the file tree. I can go ahead and close out of the layout file. We're going to work between the index file and our new dynamic route. And really a lot of the same dependencies and a lot of the same things are in both. Once again, Alt-Z to wrap anything down in the index file that is off the screen. And really, since I have both of these open up here, I could go ahead and press Control-B to close the file tree, and we can just toggle back and forth up here. So we've already imported quite a few things here at the top. We have view, text, style sheet, pressable, text input, but we're going to need a few more. So let's start with those. We'll import use state, going to need use effect, and we're also going to want our use context so we can get our theme as well, and get all of that from React. Then we're going to import safe area view, and that should come from React Native Safe Area Context. After that, let's go ahead and get our theme context. That should come from @context/theme context. Then we're going to import the status bar, which we also used in the last lesson. That comes from Expo status bar. We're going to set up fonts like we did previously on the other page. So we want enter underscore 500 medium. Also the use fonts hook. Those come from Expo Google Fonts/enter. And then we're going to use the sun and moon icons. So that comes from import octicons. There we go, octicons. And that's from Expo Vector Icons / there we're missing something at the end of that autocomplete. We need /octicons. And then we're going to use our async storage that we applied in the last lesson as well. So import async storage. And that should come from React Native Async Storage /async storage. And we're also going to need useRouter once again, because we're going to want to navigate back to our original list after we make any change to the individual to-do. So we'll have import useRouter, and that's going to come from Expo Router. Okay, that should be all of the imports we end up needing here in the page. Let's get started underneath our ID that we've already got from useLocalSearch and we're going to define some state here for the individual to-do. So we'll have to-do and set to-do. We'll set those equal to useState. And if you remember, our to-dos are objects, so we just want an empty object here to start out with. Let's also go ahead and define the router once again. So const router equals useRouter. And after that, we're going to just copy some things from our index page that are absolutely identical. So what we want to do here is get the const loaded and error from the use fonts hook. We'll copy that and go back, paste that in. I also noticed we hadn't got the color scheme and the set color scheme and theme from our context yet. So let's get all of those. And just for consistency, let's put them kind of in the same place here, just above the use router. Now we are going to have a use effect where we load the data. So I'll start it, but I won't put in the details yet, and we'll come back to that. So let's go ahead and just put in the basic use effect here, and we'll have an empty dependency array for now. So we'll come back to this use effect. But after that, if you remember, when we load these fonts, we want to have the last part after any use effect we would call. So we want to copy this last part and just put it after the use effect. So here we go. I'll put that in. And all of that is the same, so it was just easy to copy it. We'd already covered what it all did in previous lessons, so that's essentially loading in our theme and fonts. Now let's talk about this use effect, because we're already using async storage, and really that's where we want to get the data for any of the individual to-dos, because we already load the data into storage in the index file when the to-do list loads, and when we make any changes, of course, we update that async local storage as well. So anytime we would navigate to edit an individual to-do, this would be the place to load that data in. And of course, after we make any changes, we'll want to save it to our async storage as well. But let's start off with our fetch, getting the data from the async storage. So I'll say const fetch data. I'm going to set this equal to an async function, and this async function will receive the ID of the to-do. And now inside of this function, we'll have a try catch. So there's the try. Let's put the catch right below. Receive the error here, and of course we could console.error the error and just pass that in. So in the try is where we're going to take care of everything. Let's define our JSON value. Set this equal to await async storage dot get item. If you remember, we were calling our storage to-do app. So we're getting all of the to-dos at this point. And now we'll say const storage to-dos equals. And now we'll use a ternary. So if we have a JSON value, essentially if it's not equal to null, then we'll say json.parse, and we'll parse that JSON value. Otherwise, we'll just return null. Okay, so now let's use an if statement. So if we have storage to-dos and storage to-dos has a length, then inside we can define a specific to-do. So I'll just call this my to-do is going to equal the storage to-dos dot find, which will return the specific to-do. And we'll have to-do dot id dot toString, because any param that comes in, like the param we get from use local search params, will be a string and not a numeric value. So now we'll say equals, and we'll just compare that to the ID that's passed into the function. And then we will, let me go ahead and move that back, we will set the to-do, there we go, equal to my to-do that we have hopefully found. Okay, so that defines the function, but we still need to call the function, of course. So now we call it with the ID that is passed into the dynamic route with fetch ID. And then of course that is the dependency, is the ID. So anytime that ID changes, essentially a new to-do is passed into our dynamic route, then this use effect will run again. Now of course we also need to save the new to-do, and that's going to be in a function this time because we'll call it with a button click. So here we'll say const handle save, so it's not directly inside of use effect. This will be an async function. And now we don't have to pass in the ID because we're going to use our state above. So it's going to be the to-do state that is set, the specific to-do that we have. Okay, so here is our try. And let's put the catch once again with catch and an error. And we'll console.error that error and pass it in. Now inside of the try here, I'll scroll for a little bit of room. Let's define our saved to-do. This is going to be equal to the to-do that we have, and now we're changing the title because that's what we'll be able to edit. There's really nothing else we can edit besides the completed status, and we can do that right on the list. So we're going to edit the title on this edit page. So this will receive the to-do.title from the state. Okay, so there is our saved to-do. Now we'll say const JSON value. Set this equal to await async storage once again. Get item. We're getting the to-do app item from storage. After that, const storage to-dos. This should look very familiar because it's what we did in the previous function as well. So we'll say JSON value not equal to null. Then we'll call JSON.parse and lowercase parse. There we go. And now we'll have JSON value. Otherwise, it will be null. And get rid of the semicolons. I don't consistently use those. Okay, if storage to-dos and storage to-dos dot length, having trouble speaking today, we'll say const other to-dos equals the storage to-dos dot filter. And now we're going to filter out the to-do ID. So we'll have to-do.id not equal to saved to-do.id. Let me press Alt-Z to wrap that down. So what I'm doing here is removing the to-do that we edited, and now we'll have the other to-dos because we don't want the old version of that to-do. We want to include the new one. So here's all of the other to-dos. And now after that, we'll say const all to-dos equals a new array, and we can pass in the other to-dos, and then we can pass in our saved to-do. So that will replace the old version of that to-do. Okay, now we'll await async storage, and we won't call that yet. We want set item first, and then we'll call this, and we'll save it under the to-do app. And then we'll say JSON.stringify, and let's pass in all to-dos. But with this if, we should also put an else. So let's say else. Now we can await async storage dot set item, and this will once again be the to-do app value. And now we'll say JSON.stringify. And now we're going to pass in something different. This would be, for example, if this was the only to-do we had. So it's an array with our to-do object in here. So if we didn't have to-dos in storage for some reason, say everything was deleted and there was no length to that array, then we would just create a new one here. Okay, finally, after our handle save logic, we have one more thing to do, and that is router.push, and we want to just go back to the home page. So that would be just at the slash here. This would take us back to the root. So after we have edited and saved our to-do changes, we're going to go back to the list, the index page. And that really gives us all of the logic we need for the page, but we're really not returning anything new yet. So let's go ahead and update everything we had here. First of all, I want to wrap everything inside of the safe area view component that we have. So let's go ahead and the closing at the end here. After that, we're going to look at the rest. So we're going to have a view, and of course that view is going to have a text input where we can change things. So we'll say text input, and that can close itself out, a self-closing tag. We're also going to have a pressable here where we want to actually save our changes. So we'll leave that as well. Now that's one view. Other than that, let's go ahead and put in the next view. And actually, I just told you wrong. I don't think this would be our save button. I think we want to make this our night and day, our light and dark button, our sun and moon, all of those things right here. Inside of this view, let's go ahead and make a save button. We'll also make a cancel button as well. So here we'll have a pressable, then another pressable. And after those, we'll close out that view. We're also going to use the status bar like we did in the previous component. Now here we'll set the style. Let's set this equal to the color scheme. Create a ternary. So if this equals dark, then the color scheme will be set to light. And remember, we did this before so we could see the things like the battery meter up at the very top of the screen. Now here we want dark. So the reason we're setting it this way, so it's just the opposite. So if the color scheme's dark, we'll make that battery meter and other things there in the very top status bar light so we can see them. Okay, after that, this is a self-closing tag as well. So close that out. And now we're ready to put in some details here for the page. So again, a text input. This is light and dark mode. This will be a save button. And this will be a cancel button to cancel out of our changes. Now we haven't created the styles yet, but I'm going to apply them here, and then as we actually create them below, I'll go ahead and bounce back and forth so you can see each different component as the style is applied. But for now, I'll just say style is equal to, and we'll have a styles object, so it will be styles.container, not style sheet, styles. There we go. Now after that, let's go ahead and set the styles for the view or the style. We'll set that equal to styles.input container. And now our text input is going to have several different things we set on it. So we'll start with style, set that equal to styles.input. We're also going to have a placeholder value here, and we'll set this equal to edit to do. After that, placeholder text color, let's set that equal to gray. And now let's set the value of this input equal to to-do.title, and I'll use optional chaining because it could be undefined or empty. And then we'll say, if it is, of course, just set it to an empty string. Okay, after that, on change text. And this is where we'll update the to-do value. So that's set equal to our curly bracket. I can't see it right now. There we go. Let's go ahead and pass in a function that receives the text. And we set that equal to set to do with our use state above. Remember, this is an object, so we'll spread in to do, and then we'll have our title text. So if this is confusing at all, this is the to-do state from above, and usually I would use previous here in a set to do. So let me do that instead. I'm going to say got the previous state, which you can do with the setter in the use state hook. So set to do is receiving the previous state, and now I need to wrap this in another parentheses that we would see here. So let me add one here at the end. And now instead of this to do state, I typically like to use the previous state, and I'm just spreading that in. And of course it is a to do still, so it's representing essentially the same thing I had. I think this is a better way to do it. And then we have the title text. So this is overriding the title property of that to-do state. Okay, our next button being the toggle for the theme, we can really just get that from our index where we had already created that. So let me scroll down in the page to where we had that with our Octacon. There I see it. Here is the pressable itself. So it has its own on press. I'm just going to copy this full thing from line 115 down to 120, Control C to copy, come back here and highlight the pressable that we had inserted here and just paste it in. So it's the same thing. When I save it auto formatted, now we have our light dark button that we had created in the previous lesson. Okay, let's scroll up for some more room and we'll look at our second view here. Now I know this isn't where the input is, it's where the save and cancel buttons are going to go. But nevertheless, I'm going to apply the same style here. So I'll have styles.input container as they apply to both views that we had. After that, our pressable here is going to be the save button. So let's come down an extra line and we'll say on press, we're going to call the handle save function that we previously defined. Other than that, we'll set the style equal to styles dot save button. So our save button is going to look a little different than our cancel button. And then on the pressable button itself, we'll have some text. We'll set the style here equal to, let's say styles dot save button text. And of course we want it to say save. Now just to make things a little easier, I'm going to copy this save button that we just made, Control C, and then paste it over the other area we have a button for pressable. Now we'll just change what we need to change here. So this on press is going to be an anonymous function. And inside this anonymous function, we're going to say router.push. Then we'll just go back to the home page. So that's a pretty easy way to cancel out our changes and not save them, and just essentially cancel out of editing that to-do, go back to our to-do list. After that, we will have styles. And now, if you remember, we can apply more than one style if we put them inside of brackets like an array. So here we're going to have brackets and we'll say styles.save button, even though it's the cancel button, because many of the same styles will apply. But then we can override that by providing an additional style here, essentially overriding one of the styles that's in the save button style or class. And so I'm just going to set the background to red. And by putting that in that array, they'll both apply. So it will first apply these styles, and then it will overwrite the background color from the save button style with red. Now for the text style, we'll do something very similar. So let's once again put our save button text style in brackets. Then let's put a comma here, and here let's change the color of the text to white. And of course, we want to change the text itself to cancel. Now all that remains are actually creating those different styles that we've applied. So underneath our function here, let's create our function for creating those styles. Function create styles. We'll set this equal to, actually we have the parentheses first, and we'll have theme that gets passed in and color scheme as we have in previous lessons as well. Then we're going to return style sheet dot create, and for now I'll just pass in an empty object because we still need to call this function above. Let's scroll up and do just that. I'll scroll up here, say above the handle save, right after our if statement here. So I'll say const styles equals create styles, and we'll pass in the theme and the color scheme. So now that we've defined the styles and they'll apply, we just need to go ahead and create the individual areas like the container and the input container and so on that contain those styles here inside of our style sheet .create. Let's start with the container. And here I just need to set flex equal to 1, width at 100%, and then also the background color, which here we need to remember our theme just has a background property and not background color. Okay, let's put a comma after that. Now this won't apply a whole lot. Let's go ahead and see how it looks in the browser or in your Expo Go app, whichever you prefer. So I'll open up the terminal window with control and the back tick. We can see mine's already running. If yours isn't running, you want to do npx expo start, which will start that. Let's go ahead and go to the browser and let's see what we've got here. It looks like I need to refresh. And I have an error. Let's go back. Now this is where I was telling you earlier, at least with an overlay, I should have one in the video to show this, that the octacons either needed to not have the curly braces when you import that, or not have the /octacons. So you could get rid of this, still use the curly braces, because then it should bring in octacons from Expo vector icons. But if you have the /octacons, then you don't want the curly braces. Let's try it this way. Now I'll go back to the browser and refresh and see if I can get the app to actually load. Yes, it did. So that looks good. Let's go to the page now and see what we get. Okay, we don't have a whole lot, but we do have a few things. We've got our day and night, our light and dark toggle. And now when I toggle to light, you can see some more. We have the text for the to-do, says set up the new computer, and it's actually an input. Notice when I click in there, it has the line. We've got the save button and the cancel button. They're just hard to see, especially when we go to dark mode. Let's go back and apply some more styles. Maybe I'll leave it in light mode, even though that's bright, and we'll be able to see the things a little bit better as we go. Okay, back on the page now where we're creating the styles here for the dynamic route. We have the container. After that, we want to have the input container. So this wraps around both the part that has the input and the part that has the buttons. We'll have flex direction. Set that to row. Align items. We want in the center. Set the padding to 10. Put a gap between the items of 6. Width at 100%. A max width 1024. Margin horizontal, that would be left and right. We'll set to auto so it centers horizontally. And then pointer events. And we want this one just to avoid some of those warnings we've seen in the console before. We'll set that to auto. I'll put a comma here after the input container. And let's see what that changed in the browser. So, okay, now we have a little bit different setup. You still don't see a whole lot of detail. And of course, in dark mode, you don't see much at all. But here's the two buttons. Here's the input. Here's the toggle. Let's go back and add some more. We will get away from that bright page soon. I prefer the darker pages myself. Okay, after this, we'll design the input itself. We'll set that to a flex of 1. Border color, set that to gray. Border width of 1. A border radius, which will make the corners round just a little bit. We'll set that to 5. Padding of 10. Margin right. Go ahead and add just a little bit there, even though we do have that gap too. So we'll say margin right 10. Font size 18. Font family, this is what we imported. Enter. We'll have underscore 500 medium. And again, these are just my styles. Of course, play around with it, style it, make it your own app. The min width is to let the input shrink if it needs to shrink for smaller screens. And I'll set the color equal to theme text, so it actually changes with the theme we have. Okay, I'll put a comma after that. Let's go back to the browser and see how these styles apply. Hey, our input looks much better now. We can see set up the new computer and it shows up in a full input. Switch this, and yes, the input looks great in dark mode too. So really, now we just need to style these buttons. Let's go back to VS Code once again. And after this, we want the save button. Set the background color equal to the theme dot button. And then we'll have a border radius equal to 5 once again. So we have some rounded corners and padding of 10. So this is the save button, but remember some of the save button styles apply to the cancel button as well. And then let's go ahead and just add the other style here because there's not much. Save button text. Here we'll have font size of 18. And now the color, this is where we import the color scheme into the function so we can use it. And we'll check to see if this color is dark. Then we want to set the color to black. Otherwise, we want white. And save. Now we should be finished styling. Let's go back and look at the edit page. So here is the light mode. Set up the new computer. Clearly have a save and cancel button. When I switch over to dark mode, what I prefer, our save and cancel button, and again the to-do here that can be edited. Let me go ahead and cancel. We should go back to the main list. If I click on even one that has been completed, I should be able to edit it. Yep, pay the bills. I could switch this to monthly bills. Let's go ahead and save. Now when we come back and find pay the bills, even though it's crossed out, it says pay the monthly bills. Now I can long press and uncomplete, uncross that out. But either way, our long press is working and our dynamic routes are working as well. So everything looks good there. One other thing I want to try is possibly limiting the length of the to-do. When we get down to a smaller screen, for example, let's look at this. We're in an iPhone 6, 7, 8 DevTools mode right now here in Chrome. And if I put in a long to-do like check for the news paper every weekday morning, that should crowd off of the screen, and it sure does. Now, of course, if we switch this over, it looks great in horizontal mode, and if we come out of a smaller screen, it's going to look fine too, but maybe we don't want to allow the text to be that long, or you might prefer to set up a style where the text actually wraps down. But let's just see if we can limit this input first. Okay, we're back in VS Code. We already have our dynamic route file with the id.jsx, and we also have the index, and they both have text inputs. So let's scroll up here to our text input, and where is it? We've got the handle save. Here we go. So inside of the JSX return here, just after style, I'm going to put a max length, set this equal to 30. So when we edit at this point, we can't enter anything that's longer than 30 characters. Now let's go over to the index.jsx and let's find the text input that we're using there as well. So that should be down here. Here we go. Right after the style here, I'm also going to put max length equals 30. And that should limit the length of what we can enter for a to-do, both when it's originally created and when it's edited. Let's go back to the browser now. This one I can't really change right now. Well, I can edit it and change it that way, but I can't go ahead and make it shorter than 30 otherwise. So let me go ahead and just change it to again every week or something, whatever this says, and I'll save. Now I can delete that one, but let's try to enter a new one. So take out the trash every week. Day. I can't type day anymore. I have ran out of characters, and that's what I wanted to happen. So now this looks just fine. Take out the trash every week. Now let's try to edit this. Here I'll try to add more characters as well. So every week day. I cannot add more characters here either. So everything does work the way we want it. We could still save this. So I could switch this to every Tuesday, for example. Save the edit. And that looks just fine. So I hope this lesson has helped you learn more about dynamic routes with the Expo Router when you're creating a React Native app. Today, we routed to an individual to-do page so we could edit any one of our to-dos at this dynamic route that accepted an ID in the route. A quick shout out to my patrons. Holy Coder is a progress provider. Sean Lynch and Gregory Perry are senior patrons. And to my junior patrons, Stacy, Isaac, Will, Ernie, Heath, Abe, Javier, Michael, Malik, thank you all so very much. You're helping me reach my goals. Remember to keep striving for progress over perfection, and a little progress every day will go a very long way. Please give this video a like if it's helped you, and thank you for watching and subscribing. You're helping my channel grow. Have a great day, and let's write more code together very soon.